we're going to do a little bit of an in-depth look at corset breathing today. So the first thing you want to think about for corset breathing is to put your hands right here on your rib cage, and I'd like you to inhale. And when you go to inhale, I want you to notice, just become really aware of what happens in your rib cage. Do you feel like you open up only from the front, or are you able to bring your breath into the sides of your rib cage and also into the back of your rib cage? Now you can test this by looking in a mirror, by placing your fingers like this with your thumbs back behind and your fingers in front. And as you go to inhale, notice what your fingers do. See how my fingers press apart? When I exhale, they come back toward one another. So that's the first step. If you're having trouble getting them to open side to side, or you're having trouble feeling it come into the back, it's perfectly normal. So that, first off, it can take a lot of practice. Second off, there could be there could be a lot of tension through the fascia and through the muscular areas there. So we might want to do some body rolling there, or relaxation techniques such as meditation and visuals to try and open up that space. But just don't feel frustrated if you're having trouble getting it to open, although that is a key component to being able to corset breathe really well. So that's something to think about, and I'm going to show some examples of how to loosen that area up in other videos coming. But for now, I just want you to be really, really aware of what happens when you go to breathe into your rib cage. We want to think about breath as like a 360-degree balloon maybe that's blowing up, or some people choose to think of it as an umbrella that they open, and it just opens up in the rib cage area. I'm not a fan so much of the umbrella, because then I think people forget that there's, a 360 degrees, right? And so we want to think about top and bottom as well. I prefer a balloon or a ball in your imagination, or maybe it's less substantial than a balloon or ball. Maybe it's a big ball of light that comes in. However it works for you. Remember, when you're using your imagination, you need to choose something that truly works for your brain and your mind. If I say something and it doesn't work, come up with your own picture, because that really will help in anything that we're working on. Okay, so that's the first step. What can you do and what can you not do with breath in your rib cage area? The second thing is, now we're going to go down to the floor. So I want to show you. You could use blankets, you could use towels, but I've got two yoga blankets. I'm going to put one out like this, and I'm going to fold it like that. Can you see that? So this is where my shoulder blades will lay down. This is for my head. If I needed a little bit more lift to my head, I could either do it like that, or I could go like that. That's way too much for me. And in fact, I often do this without any blankets most of the time, but I want to make this known to you, because for beginners, this is really, really key. A lot of people do not have a habit of keeping, it's not an ability, it's a habit of keeping their xiphoid process, which is right at the base of your sternum, their xiphoid process down. And what happens is, if you lift up like this, you're used to lifting like this, you're used to moving like this, walking with your chest forward, you lose core connection. So the minute that we drop it down, notice how the posture shifts too. My posture goes into beautiful alignment when I keep my xiphoid process tucked into my core. And that's how I like to remind people. I'll say, tuck it into your core. I want those two bowls, my pelvic bowl and then my inverted rib cage bowl, to align and stack. And that includes the xiphoid process. If the rib cage and the xiphoid process lift up, then I'm not stacked properly anymore. So then I lose that, not only the alignment through the spine, but I lose core connection. So it's a very important piece. Even when we lie down, if our body is so used to lifting that xiphoid process, and we have some sway back issues with our back, it's very likely that we're going to lay down in that position and it's still going to be there. So what we're doing is lifting up. So I'm lifting my shoulder blades up slightly, and then I have a lift under my head. Now, if yours is very severe, you may need to double what's under your shoulders, because the important part is to get that rib cage down. Okay, so getting the xiphoid process tucked into the core. Excellent. Now, next thing. So now we've got the breathing part. We know we're going to breathe into our rib cage. As we go to exhale, there's a couple things. I want you to think about, number one, elongating your exhale. So you're going to make that exhale longer than your inhale. Number two, I want you to think about where your exhale starts at. We inhale into the rib cage, yes, but our exhale is going to begin lower at our pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor is going to draw up, and the exhale and all the breath is going to come out from there. So you want to think about and create a picture of the exhale coming out that way, not starting here. If we start here, then we don't completely empty this area of breath. And this is a very important piece, because we are trying to get into the very deep abdominal muscle, the transversus abdominal muscle. And that muscle, the only way to work that muscle, there's no exercise you can do for that muscle. The only way to get to it is by breathing, by exhaling. It contracts. So that's one of the reasons why we want a nice long exhale, because it offers us a longer contraction. It also allows the core to set itself up for when you're going to lift heavy things. Okay, so I want you to place your hands, if you can, by your rib cage. And I want you to soften through the chest, soften through the shoulders, and just really allow them to be open. You inhale, trying to bring the breath into the sides and back of the rib cage. As you go to exhale, think about that breath coming from the pelvic floor up and out. I like to ask people to purse their lips and imagine that they're blowing out candles from a cake. Okay, loads of candles on a cake. So it's a fairly, it's not a hugely forceful breath, but it's not a soft, relaxed breath. I'm blowing those birthday candles out. Then I'm going to move on to some new imagery here. So I want you to soften the belly button and imagine and feel that it drops down towards the floor. This does not mean pull it down to the floor. This does not mean you are dragging it down to the floor. You're not drawing it in or back. You are allowing. It's a very different feel. So as I exhale, I allow the belly button to drop towards the floor. The more that I allow, I can begin to feel the muscles of the transversus abdominis, otherwise known as the corset muscle, come from the back and go around and close. Now, what I like to say is that, or this is the imagination picture that I use, is that the belly button drops down and then the doors close over the top of the belly button. So I imagine these two doors that are closing over the top of the belly button. And that's basically your TVA muscle come in. But again, I'm using my imagination to create this movement in the body. I'm giving my brain this image. So we've got a number of things going on. We want to make sure that the breath is coming from the pelvic floor up and out. We want to allow softening through the belly button area and a dropping. And then the doors close over the top. When the doors close over the top, ideally we want to be able to keep those doors closed and the belly button dropped as much as we can. Now, the minute that we go to inhale again, they're going to come apart slightly. And then as we exhale again, they're going to close slightly, and then they're going to inhale, but they're never going to come out to fully open again. That's the ideal. When we inhale, there's, fascia and muscles that are just kind of gently pulling things apart. So there's no way to keep it completely locked down. And we would never want to keep it locked down. Anyway, we just want that movement. But the ideal is not to let it completely get flaccid or relaxed. We just want there to be that tension there. It's a very light tension. And then we are, again, bringing our breath into the sides of the rib cage and into the back. And of course into the front as well, but most people just breathe into the front. So I generally just cue sides and back. Now you may not be able to bring it into the back either. And that's another video for another day. I'll try and differentiate how to get it into the sides and how to get it into the back. But this is the basic breath. So I'm going to go ahead and cue you through it. So we have our shoulders lifted, our head slightly lifted. Again, this is to keep core connection through the bowls, right? We're going to inhale into the sides and back of our rib cage. We're going to exhale. Belly button drops. The doors close over the top, and you've imagined that the breath is coming from the pelvic floor up and out. Then you hold that there while you again inhale into the sides and back. Belly button drops down even a little bit further. Doors close over the top. That breath comes down or up and out from the pelvic floor. And we do it again. Exhaling nice and long. Inhaling again into the rib cage. Exhaling, dropping that belly button, softening it, closing the doors over the top, imagining that air come from the pelvic floor up and out. This is the basic breath. You may have a number of questions about that basic breath, and that's okay. Once you get the basic breath, then we can add in exercises to it. We can add in weightlifting to it. There's 1.5 million ways to use that basic breath, but the key is you got to start somewhere, and this is where we start, and this is how we progress really rapidly, is by taking our time to start and really learning that basic breath over and over and over again. And we're always, in the classes that I teach, we're always going to come back to that basic breath. We're always going to start with that basic breath, and then we're going to add to it. So even if you feel like, I've got this corset breathing, I'm going to move beyond it. I've been doing corset breath for 10 years, and I still come back to the basics every day before I start to work out. It is a reminder for my body. It's a reminder for my brain, and it really gets my core active really, really fast. So corset breathing, just as a little reminder, is not an everyday, daily breathing. This is used in exercise. It is used when you're going to lift something heavy. You're going to use it if you're trying to heal yourself of diastasis recti, that kind of thing. So it's a wonderful breathing technique, but it's a technique. It's not an everyday, this is how I breathe 24/7 kind of breath work. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll try to answer them in the comments.